Where's Garnet?
Where is he?
God.
Where are you?
Well, hurry up. I got to get going. I can only be here for like 10
deadline.
minutes.
John, take it.
Okay. I am the sidekick. I guess I need to step in. How does he normally start these things? Welcome to One Up Yours. So, Garnet, I believe, is...
Indisposed.
Indisposed.
Yeah.
He's somewhere
He's in the Midwest.
in the Midwest.
You don't want to give the exact address because there's some crazy, you get the
Midwest
one or
is
two
pretty
crazies
vague.
out there. Yeah, I think he's safe.
Well, like we had kids this week come in from Tennessee. They came out to Ziff. They were working in San Jose.
I heard somebody
Big
walking
kids,
them
right?
around.
Big fans of the podcast. Shout out to the guys at Macaulay.
Yeah.
Thanks for visiting.
Exactly.
Enjoy the pictures. Sorry, I was busy playing World of Warcraft and couldn't be chatty.
But that doesn't mean you should just come show up to our office. That doesn't usually happen, so please don't.
So who's here?
So who's here? So I guess I'm hosting. This is John.
I'm Luke from One Up.
Shane from EGM.
And tonight, the role of Garnet will be played by Mark McDonald from GameVideos.com.
You're going to be playing the role of Garnet?
Tonight, like a soap opera. We'll
giving
just
us
pretend
comments
that
on
I am
Blu-ray.
Garnet, and you're just supposed to suspend your disbelief.
Well, so everything you know about everything, forget it.
And you have to just antagonize Luke.
Cue old person jokes
All right.
in 3, 2.
And okay, so today we are going to be doing What You're Playing as usual. We're going to start talking about our pile of shame entry, Psychonauts. Then we're going to go into some reader comments from you guys. And then in the second segment of the show, we're going to talk about games that we want to see on Xbox Live Arcade, right?
Wrong.
No, we're not. We changed our mind
We're
on
gonna
this.
talk about
we
Surprise!
might talk about that a little bit, but we're also going to talk about. I don't know if you guys have seen in the what month is it? The July issue of Esquire. It has the State of the American Man on the cover. There's a story by Chuck Klosterman called "The Lester Bangs of Video Games," and we're going to talk about that a little bit in
And
the
who
second
that is.
segment. Hopefully, you all know who Lester Bangs is. If you don't, we'll explain later. Then in the third segment, we will be... Actually, in the second segment, we'll be Shane free, right?
Tragically.
You're not going to talk about Lester Bangs.
And I love Lester Bangs.
That's
He's
the
like,
thing. I almost think that you should probably
I know
stay
he's like
for
my
that.
favorite music
Especially-
critic
let's
ever.
ambush you on the air. You have to stay for the Lester Bangs thing.
Yeah, just get to the Lester Banks thing. We'll move quickly.
We'll explain it to Jen.
All right,
your Lord and
We will.
Master.
I'm in trouble.
So then, the third segment, as ever, Luke will be taking us through the news before we wrap up at the end and do the final part of our And One contest with Ubisoft. So,
Well, the first thing we should probably talk about is that we don't have a winner for you right now for the this week's competition.
The
which is
illustration.
the illustrating us thing, because the contest technically ends Friday. So in order to find out who won, Skip's going to put a sticky on the message boards late tomorrow night. That's Friday night, or so it's tonight technically, because we're filming on Thursday.
we have some really
Is
amazing...
that confusing?
We have amazing
I'm
entries.
lost.
I did talk about before
So
the
who
show
won?
about us not referring to days so it
Yeah.
wouldn't get confusing.
Yeah.
I was
All the
not
pre-show
listening.
planning out the window.
This weekend, after, you will be able to go to boards.oneup.com and
because
the
it
winner
is
of the illustration.
Friday today, so that would tomorrow would be.
But we have seen some good illustrations
Keep up the
already.
good work, kids.
There's been some excellent stuff.
Yeah, there's been some really, like, some stuff where I have asked if we could just buy it.
I like that you guys just like outright sort of encouraged sort of this fan worship. Like it was no roundabout
No,
way.
it
It
was-
was
it
just
was
like
skipping our
make
net.
false gods of us. Show us your golden idols, and we will reward you for it.
We invited abuse, and it
Someone photoshopped me as an Ewok.
that's the kind of love.
There was one.
Okay, that's
you
fair.
were like
That's
a
fair,
large
then.
black woman or something. It was
I was
very
Mr.
disturbing.
T in one.
I saw one that was very
That's how
disturbing.
maybe that's how they see you from your voice.
I'm the
It's like
black guy
you
of the
project
podcast.
Large black woman somehow,
yeah.
or Ewok.
So what?
My-
It's the
Or
beard
one
that
One
does
that I
it.
really liked was one of me as a Canadian mounted policeman standing next to a little girl that says, "Luke can date my sister."
That was nice. I quite enjoyed the one of me riding an enormous missile.
Well, yeah, that was quite good.
For a
It
great
was,
was that from Dr.
it was a nod to
Strangelove?
Dr.
Yeah.
Strangelove. It was quite
Okay.
good. Yeah.
So there's some good stuff. So you can check the boards and see what's there. But yeah, check back this weekend and we'll have the winner up there. So we're going to start off with what you've been playing. Who wants to start? Luke?
Well,
Go?
yeah, I guess I've been pretty shameful this week because I just got a copy of Psychonauts Skip, 20 minutes ago from you. So I haven't played any Psychonauts yet. So that was pretty helpful for the team.
You played some Halo 2.
Played some
Yeah,
Halo
I
2.
played Halo 2 last night with the Ziff group. You weren't there, John.
I know. I was out.
Yeah.
That was all right. I will say though, Luke's comment on the show before about how he's better than me and Shu combined.
Yeah.
The one game that we played that was a free-for-all, Luke had 25 points. I had 15 points. Shu had 12 points, which clearly 27 being greater than 25.
I just want to point out
Luke was mathematically incorrect.
I just want to point out the difference. I mean, that's still that was second place was 15 and I was 25. Like, you can just do the math. When
Okay.
you 25 minus 15 is an ass whooping.
Right. And you know what? If me or Shu wanted to sit up on the perch and lock out with the sword and sniper rifle for the entire time, maybe we would have done a little bit
you guys
better.
brought it to me, though.
Maybe we would have done it a little bit
You brought up
better.
the sniper rifle and she brought me the sword, and I was like, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I like to be up here.
Nice.
It's a good place, yeah.
Does he camp?
He camps like no
I
fucking
do
tomorrow.
not
He camps like
fucking
nobody's business.
I used the strategic choke points on the map.
And it's not
Tilt
only
things
camping,
in
but you
my
have
favor.
the two objects in the game where you can just sit there, and if anybody comes up behind you, you just switch to the sword. So I took it upon myself to take you
run
down.
8 or
And the
9
first time
times.
that I got you, you whiffed twice with the sword. I think I got you, but then you were set up there for like another 20 minutes, and yeah. So anyway, yeah, Luke proved.
Does he prey on the weak?
No.
Well,
I killed the shit out of you and Shu.
yeah, that's true. You're equal opportunity. You didn't particularly go after
Like the
Greg
girls.
Ford or
Yeah.
Skip. Skip was there for like 5 minutes, and then he got discouraged.
He
and
quit before I got in.
I know better.
Skip was crying, found
I
crying.
know better than to play with you guys.
Yeah, Shane stopped playing. So anything else you've been playing?
Brian Intihar and I just finished up playing NFL head coach.
You love that.
yeah.
I've
that
heard a
come out?
lot of mixed things about that game this week.
Does it come out when next week? Tuesday?
Yeah, Skip's nodding yes.
Okay.
It's that is something you may have to experience for yourself to believe it. It's like a text-based game with loading. It's like the Zork of NFL.
It's like, would you like another job? Would you like to take on a second career?
It is. It's like in EA called today, and they're like, "Would you be interested in talking to Bill Cowher next week about NFL head coach?" And I was like,
You're like, would I?
"I was like, huh, no." Like, what's my question? Like, hey, Bill, does coaching in the NFL suck as much as this game? Really? Because I mean, you're getting paid, and I'm not.
Would that be considered a review type comment? I'm not sure.
Well, you know, there's a playable demo out for PC. Maybe that's what he.
Yeah, that of course. That's what you're talking about. Do you know? Are they going to add this to Madden from now on?
I hope not.
Because
No.
I
Is this
thought
what the secret special thing
Well, that's the
about
thing.
Madden we're going to hear is?
Someone at IGN, some editor over there today was like, "Guess what? EA's gonna unleash a special secret that you're gonna be really excited about." And I was like, "Oh God!" I talked to Brian Intihar. His guess was that it would be they'd add Superstar mode into the next gen version, but who knows? Whatever.
Wow.
Shane, have you been playing anything better than that?
Well, you know, the same old stuff I always play, like Street Fighter and Soul Calibur. But in addition, we finally got a playable build of Guitar Hero 2. It's just the E3 build, but we finally have it.
I've heard you really got me a lot in the office the last few days.
Yeah. So what's the Black Sabbath song that's on there?
War Pigs.
Warpigs.
But it sounds like the Faith No More version of War Pigs. I don't know if you remember that version. It's kind of a.
So-
it doesn't sound. It's not someone doing an Aussie impression.
Yeah. So I didn't actually play the E3 build. On the original, like some of the covers were. In fact, I even won a bet against my girlfriend on songs that she's listened to like 500 times that she thought it was the original artist.
Some of them sounded
but
like-
some of them
yeah.
were really like the Chili Peppers song. I can't remember what it was, but it did not sound
Higher Ground,
like,
was it?
Yeah.
But like the Bowie was really good.
The Bowie was incredible.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones she.
I think it's
by.
probably the same thing, like hit and miss. You know, they're not all
yeah.
going to be good.
Right.
But I mean, you really got me. That really does sound like.
It sounds
It
exactly.
sounds like David Lee Roth. Channeling the Kinks. I mean, it's definitely a lot of them. It's weird. It's like covers of covers almost.
Right.
That's better than David Lee Roth doing bluegrass. I don't know if you saw that on the Tonight
I
Show.
heard
He
about
did
that.
He did Panama bluegrass. And it was maybe the worst thing that's ever happened on the planet.
We'll have to cut to that when we do the
You
video
should.
version.
Oh, Jesus
We'll have
Christ.
to include that.
But we're on deadline, so not a whole lot of gaming from you right now.
But you're playing a lot of games for review, right? Do you want to plug some of those for the EGM?
I'm still playing Rough Trigger, the Ratchet and Clank inspired platformer.
We used up all the rough
Yeah, I was
trigger
gonna
jokes
say,
last
see
week.
last week's episode for a series of rough trigger jokes.
or Crusty Demons. I don't know if you got to that one. We're also reviewing Crusty.
I did not know
Crusty
until
Demons.
just today. I had heard like 4 or 5 people mention Crusty Demons.
Crusty
Crusty
Demons.
Demons, in fact, is a motocross
It's a license.
game, right?
It's a licensed title.
Right.
What?
There's a movie.
You haven't heard of the popular Crusty Demons series of BMX videos?
it's
no.
a video series. It's
Yeah,
not a movie.
Not a singular movie. No.
Okay.
That's it.
Well,
So you've had a laugh riot on reviews this week, huh?
Great time of year.
Big
Great time of
numbers.
year for games.
what big reviews are what's the biggest review in the issue?
Oh, come on.
I will
Jesus,
say-
this is not the EGM show. Mark, what's your plan?
I wanna
Serious,
know.
but I will say, I believe that the game of the month might be getting a 6.5. That's how good the games are this month.
All right, fair enough. So the answer is none. Right.
Save your pennies.
And now back to the EGM Live podcast. Mark?
Yeah, you
What are
really
you
got it
playing,
out
Mark?
for the EGM podcast. I've been playing Chrome Hounds for
I hear that was.
EGM, for the EGM review, and actually Geometry Wars.
Have you seen
I'm still playing Geometry
Have you seen the other
Wars,
360
so-
game that's getting reviewed this month over G Fighters? You should walk by and look at Chris and play that.
Is that the,
yeah.
the Ubisoft thing?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Taito game that they licensed last minute. I just heard about it for the first time 2 weeks ago,
check it out.
and you're already reviewing it. So yeah, not a lot of
That's
whole
it.
lot.
Good time of year.
Sounds and
stuff.
that.
It's a good
Chrome
time to be
Hounds.
playing Psychonauts.
Geometry Wars. Yeah,
That was a good segue. How is it?
It's good.
You like it?
It's actually funny. I laughed out loud.
You laughed out loud?
Out loud.
How far did you get?
End of level 1.
Yeah.
is that I mean, is that like beating a level in Mario, or is that like
It's more or
World
less a
One?
tutorial.
Right. It's like
the tutorial
15
level.
minutes.
It's a very interactive tutorial.
It's great, yeah.
and that's a really good sign because that I think is one of the like any first level, it's
Yeah.
one of the weaker. It's
Right.
kind of like here's this, here's that sort of thing. I think it gives you a good idea for the story. So I have to do my what do you
Disclaimer?
call it? Yeah, my disclaimer. My girlfriend works at Double Fine. She worked on Psychonauts, still works there. So
What
I'm
does she do on
obviously
Psychonauts?
Tobias. She's a gameplay programmer.
Okay.
So a lot of, moving stuff around at levels, making different little gameplay things work and stuff like that. So a little different from level design, but yeah, a lot of
the same
hardcore
lines.
programming stuff. But yeah, so I guess I'm the only one here who's
beating it. Yeah.
yeah. I actually didn't beat it. I got to the last level, but that's something that I think you guys will want to save till you get there.
I've read about it. I
Yeah.
think we talked about it last week.
Yeah.
So you have a copy now?
I do. Yeah,
I have a copy. I got a copy this week. I started playing it.
We
but-
got a motor on it next week. But
Yeah.
The thing I will still say about that game is that game shows why it makes a difference for a game to be written by like an for an American audience. Like there's time and care taken in the writing, and you really notice even the games that we think are written well, or maybe some people say they're written well, like I hate to say it, but like Metal Gear. You can tell that they're trying to do a lot of ambitious stuff with the story, but it's just weird. It just doesn't work, it just doesn't mesh. And that game, I think, the one thing it does do is the dialogue. Like it works. There's word plays, there's puns, there's like actually funny jokes, so anyway. Yeah,
We'll
that's
talk
my
about it more next week. I played that a little bit, but what I ended up spending I've played every single version of Cars this week.
wow.
For fun.
And it's on every platform, including the Mac, and they're all different.
Whoa.
With your kids, or is this just you?
I've been playing it for review. I reviewed the PS2 and Xbox version, which are very similar. And then I happened to mention to Skip that I'd seen the other versions, and it's not the same game, so
That
the
was all
review
it
isn't
took.
applicable.
Yeah.
And then so his response to that was, well, how about 300 words on each then? So the PC and the Mac version are on the same disc, and that's aimed at 4-year-olds. And then the DS version is a completely different game again, and it uses the touch screen, and it's probably aimed a little older. The PSP version's a bit like the PS2 version. I mean, it's like
I heard,
Imagine that.
I heard like straight racing. They took out all of the sandbox stuff. That's what I heard.
right.
Yeah.
But the Xbox game's kind of cool. It's like a big sandboxy thing. It's probably the best sort of console-y type game. The DS one's kind of weird. It's like little memory puzzles and. I mean, it's a distraction, but I mean,
Right.
it's THQ rather than just like slam the same thing out on 6 different formats, they did actually commission different versions of the game. So, I mean, if you've got kids, it's it's worth checking out. I mean, probably not going to want to play it yourself, but
Right. Have you seen the movie, by the way?
no, I'm going on this weekend with my kids.
Yeah,
I want to see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. That's not a good sign.
I hear when your A+ student turns in a B+, you're like, eh. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
Really?
That's what I heard. I hear it's okay.
It did like $68 million or something last
Oh,
weekend.
of course, it's for the Heartland.
Yeah.
That you should like it.
No
then.
offense, Heartland.
Kentucky.
Okay, so just before the break, let's do some reader mail. What should we do here? Should we do question of the week here? Yeah. So last week's question of the week was about pre-ordering games. We talked a little bit last week about what prompted this. It was the Lord of the Rings game where you had to pre-order it to get the free stuff on Marketplace.
Yep.
Which I think we upset the guys at EA LA with. Not really sure why. I got a really abstract note from a guy down there today saying, "I'll help you out with something you're working on if you stop making stuff up." I don't think we made that up. Didn't they? They actually got back to you and confirmed it, right?
Yeah, they confirmed it with Patrick that was indeed the case. So
the story is you have to. I don't even know. You have to pre-order it, and you get what?
You pre-order it. You get 3 maps from the Battle for Middle-earth 2 for the game. You get 3 bonus maps that otherwise, if you don't pre-order, you have to pay like $8 to get online.
And you download them.
How does that work? How do they confirm?
When you pre-order, you get a coupon that you enter. I guess.
You enter it into live, and it redeems it. So that prompted a question of the week was about pre-ordering, and we got a ton of different responses. Some people just thought it was a lame question.
What? Idiots.
Tough crowd.
Some people thought it was a lame question and refused to acknowledge it. But then we did have some really good responses, and one I wanted to talk about first was a guy, The Arbiter, is a GameStop employee. And this is what he said. I'm a GameStop employee, and I do pre-order sparingly, but I hate asking people about it. I've been written up a couple of times because of it, too. I just know how much gamer friends hate going to EB and GameSpot because pushy salesmen hate hearing, do you have an Edge card? Or Madden's just around the corner, would you like to pre-order? This is something that drives me crazy when I go in there as well. Like, do you want to pre-order that? Are you sure? Are you sure?
I actually kind of...
You won't get it unless you do.
That's the other one, yeah.
I actually kind of got fired, kind of quit from a Babbage's back in like 1995 because I told somebody who came in looking for a game that we didn't have that they should go up to, I think it was like Electronics Boutique or something at
before
that,
the
at
unification
that point,
of game retail,
before the Great Awakening, and they became one. But they become more and more. Now it's like you call, and I might as well call and leave it on hold, go to the bathroom because they talk like home of Madden 2006. Would you like to? And then finally,
I worked at EB for 5 years, and we would always have to do that stuff. And you answer the phone a certain way, and we would make fun of it. We would be like. We would do it, but we'd make up a new game or whatever. We'd be like, welcome to EB, you're home for Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing 9. Like something nobody would ever want to buy.
Wait, weren't you like the manager of your store or something?
Associate manager.
Right, and your manager like didn't care about stuff like that, though.
Moving on up.
Yeah.
She didn't care. No.
Look where it got him.
I know.
Executive editor on
EGM Live. Oh, host this week of EGM Live. That's egmlive.oneup.com.
EGM Live? That's EGM's podcast, right?
I'm doing the thing where I promoted it.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out, Luke.
Every week. I got you once.
Yeah, there's a positive
one
shout
time.
out. Now continue.
So other question of the week responses. Sonic Brew actually summarized what a lot of people said, and that is that the last game I pre-ordered was Halo 2 because there was huge demand for it, even though there was still a huge amount of games in stock after day one. I think a lot of people pre-ordered that game. I think we'd all been led to believe that it would be really hard to get hold of.
You'll never get that limited edition.
Right. I mean, you saw there were actual lines in America, like for a game release.
They covered it
does
on
not
TV.
happen often.
Yeah, they covered that on TV. Yeah.
I mean, that occasionally happens for Final Fantasy. I mean, it doesn't happen for Metal Gear anymore. People don't really seem to line up for that.
Yeah, it
like a single game
really just doesn't happen. Well, they don't do the midnight. I mean, they did a whole midnight release thing, and so I mean, they were really smart about it.
Was there a midnight release for Madden? Do they do that?
Yeah, they do actually. Yeah,
they did one for SOCOM.
They've done it.
SOCOM 3 had one last October.
See, but I don't know if that's like is it like I don't know if it's a nationwide thing. It's just sort of piecemeal. Yeah. But I mean, in Japan, like it's funny because there's certain stores, like the one near where we stay when we go there, where you just are up in the morning and there's a line. And it's like, what the hell is there? What came out today? And it's like, oh, Sakura Tyson 6, or like
I was in Tokyo the day that Dragon Quest 7 came out. And that's the best-selling PlayStation game of all time there, and it was literally every store. You just walk around, hundreds of people like all everywhere. You're like, what is going on here today?
Right,
it's nuts.
But like the big ones still really happen. But even little releases, you get like little lines out there.
So I think, I mean, a lot of people it seemed to be overwhelmingly that they don't. Acidic Dot said, no, I don't. It's easy enough to walk in and buy the game in most cases. If it's not EB or GameStop, there's always Walmart. Walmart came up a lot in the responses. And, I go to the traditional places, but then if you go into a big store, it's pretty
there's
easy
like Walmarts
to find.
and Targets and
a lot of
Costco's and Fry's.
So what's the problem with that over, like, the Metal Gear pre-order? You pre-order it, you get an extra disc of content that you wouldn't get otherwise.
This is content that should have been
already there.
Should have been in the game. That's like they already had.
You feel like they're withholding the content from.
This content was finished by the time the game came out to be released, but instead of
wasn't
putting
on
it
the
in
disc.
the game,
So
they take it out. And
they're
Yeah,
charge
I mean, I think
instead
a lot of that's perception, though. If it was a second disc that just had the levels and you didn't get the disc, but when you're downloading it from live and it's like, oh man, it's right there.
It
Like,
plugs right into the game.
yeah,
works.
then it seems
Yeah.
like, what the hell? Like, why don't I get this?
Interestingly, I mean, in like 10 pages of responses, not many people talked about the pre-order incentive stuff that the stores do. Like a couple of people were like, I couldn't give a crap about the T-shirt. There wasn't much about any sort of, bonus goodies. I mean, sometimes the pre-orders they bundle in. Do they bundle strategy guides sometimes, or
Rarely.
they give you a cheap strategy guide or something? But
Sometimes you'll get like Mark was talking about, like the extra disc. Like
Yeah.
I remember pre-ordering
Yeah.
Metal Gear 3
They're
because you
getting
wanted
better.
the other thing.
Yeah, I
getting
mean, like
better.
bonus discs are cool if it's like behind the scenes stuff or making of. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because there's the whole like Halo 2, which Halo 2 also started the whole I'm going to pay $5 or $10 more for the
metal
premium
box and the
edition.
premium.
Yeah. Or Oblivion. I'm still not sure. I've heard that the extras on
the extra
Oblivion
disc
are good.
is really good.
But I still haven't watched
It's
it.
not $10 good.
Right. But you got the metal coin.
You get the metal
magical
coin, and you also
coin.
get the really annoying fold-out box, which I've learned is actually much more irritating than just a normal DVD case.
Me too. But I'm all for that stuff. Like, give them the option to pay for it. And honestly, like, just being like a collector nerd, like the Metal Gear stuff. I mean, I feel like I really missed out if I don't have something
Yeah.
like that.
It's true.
Despite how good it is, if I don't have the best edition
That's
of it
how I
up
feel
on my
too, though, is
shelf.
I want the best edition of it.
Right.
Exactly.
So I mean, it's smart on their parts. I'm all for it.
But the thing is, though, and the difference, just to clarify for people who are listening, is like these 3 maps aren't part of like a best edition. It's like it's purely incentivized pre-ordering.
Right.
So while we'll pre-order to go get
Right.
what we
So they're
feel is a
two
better
different
version of the
things.
game,
Right.
like they're pre-ordering to get stuff that you could contend should be in the game from
Right, but like
outset.
the Metal Gear thing was what you had to pre-order to get that disc, right? The extra disc.
The movie disc.
Right.
Not gameplay things. Not like part of the game. And the thing is,
So that's the distinction.
that same first day, if you go and buy this game at Best Buy, then you go online to Xbox Live and buy those maps.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
There's no way to get that disc from Metal Gear. You've missed out,
Right.
Okay,
enough.
we're going to take a break now, and we'll be back right after this.
You're listening to One Up Yours, part of the One Up Radio Network.
One Up Network Radio is being brought to you by Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter Chapter 2 content. That's an all-new downloadable content package coming up for Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter. Chapter 2 includes 4 all-new missions, along with 8 relit GRAW maps, 5 new weapons, and new game types to extend the Xbox Live experience. It's available for the Xbox 360 at the end of June on Xbox Live Marketplace.
Hello, and welcome to the One Up Radio Network. If you know the name of the podcast you'd like to hear, press 1 now. You have selected Radio PM, starring the editors of the official U.S. PlayStation magazine. To download an episode at radiopm.oneup.com, press 1 now. To listen to a promo, press 2 now. In a world ripped apart by war, only one magazine.
And we're back, and apparently we lost Shane.
We lost one.
We lost
There's going to
one.
be losses.
It's going to be losses.
happen. Yeah.
But Skip, who is rarely on the mic, and we only ever hear him shouting in the background, he's actually going to speak.
I'm here. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Yeah, concentrating on the sound and stuff.
How's your day today?
It's all right. Yeah. My DS Lite came today.
Lots of time spent at home waiting for it.
Sure was. Totally worth it, though.
So, in this segment, we're going to talk about the story in Esquire this month that's titled The Lester Bangs of Video Games.
Who's Lester Bangs? I know, kids, but I'm setting John up.
Why don't you explain? You think you're so clever?
Well, Lester Bangs was a big music critic back in the day, right?
He was.
That's
He
right,
was sort of the
Luke.
guy behind
That's right. And he was played by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
that great movie.
That great movie.
That made me decide to be a writer.
Did it?
No, not
Oh,
really.
isn't that sweet?
Yeah, I don't know too much about him, but apparently he was big into cough syrup, and he was very good friends with. He was a little bit of a hypocrite in that he was very, very, very good friends with some of the bands that he critiqued or what have you.
Yeah.
But his writing, of course, was just like poetic. It was really, and he he concentrated obviously on the soul of the music, if you will, not the
and getting to the
technical
message.
stuff.
So
Right.
this story is by Chuck Klosterman. Chuck Klosterman's America and Esquire. He subtitles the story. Sorry, that was misleading. There is no Lester Bangs of video games. Why? And the assumption that he begins with is, if you're reading this column, I'm just going to assume that you believe video games in 2006 are the cultural equivalent of rock music in 1967, because that's more or less reality. And I mean, in a lot of ways, he's right. It's sort of cutting edge of entertainment. It's, something that people misunderstand. And
right. It's something that your parents, and then there's legislation about it and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So he goes on to basically say that the problem is that when people write about video games, they're writing consumer advice about products as opposed to criticism of the content. Which I think is probably very fair.
I think on a very basic level, and everyone feel free to disagree, please, that's exactly what reviews are. And that's why I personally don't care for reviews. And Skip, is a review editor, and he's sitting right across from me, and I wrote a review this week. Mm-hmm. But it's, I think that reviews ultimately, the way that they're done for video games, are little more than like a consumer's guide. And it extends like that further to, buying a piece of technology, like, a phone or, and it's sort of reducing games, which are ultimately more than, just a consumer. They should be more than a consumer product. They should be treated as more than a consumer product. And the way we approach
I'm really sick of hearing there's no Lester Bangs of video game journalism. It's always Lester Bangs. It's not like reviews need to be better. It's always like, where is our Lester Bangs? Where is our whatever? So there's a few problems with this, I think. I agree. Any review, even now, any review that is, and you see it a lot of times, it happens with online reviews just because I think they're under time constraints, but it's like, paragraph begins, the sound is da-da-da-da, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. The graphics are da-da-da-da-da. It's just a big checklist, and they go through it just like with no deviation. But here's the problem. So that's not a good review. That's absolutely not a good review. It shouldn't be that, rote. It should be clever. It should be well done. But the problem is, number one, most of the games right now are not trying to say anything bigger. They're not trying to be like a movie.
That wasn't me. That was Luke.
We apologize for the stumble.
I'll edit that out later.
Interrupted Mark's
was that supposed to be a response to? Was that a reaction to something I said?
No, come up.
That was just bodily noises.
I agree. Like, most of the games now are products.
They are, and there's the mechanics of it, which gets in the way of them not saying. They're not only not saying anything, that in an assessment of the product, you can't get to what little message there is until you've got through the mechanics of it.
Right.
And in this story, he's talking about. He uses an example near the end of Gone with the Wind. Scarlett O'Hara asks Rhett Butler what he's supposed to do with the rest of her life, and he says he doesn't give a damn. And then he goes on to say, if this was a video game, what if this scene played out differently for every person who watched Gone with the Wind? What if Rhett occasionally changed his mind, walked back into the house and said, just kidding, baby? Which is kind of what games are. It's like,
so that's part of the problem. Games are that sometimes, but I still think that's kind of rare that games are really that, where what you do really changes the story arc. Even Grand Theft Auto, you can have your own adventures, but the story arc is there's one.
Exactly. Klosterman's assuming that you have complete and total freedom in the narrative, and he starts going on about how game criticism needs to be the significance of potentiality, and that you have all of these options. In games, you don't have you have the illusion of options.
Right. So the problem is, which I agree with him. I don't want to say there's no Lester Bangs because I'm so sick of that, but there is. It's very rare that you see a more high-minded sort of, where does this fall in the what does this mean larger, like, to video games in general and outside of video games. But the problem is there's not that many games that deserve, that merit that kind of criticism. Like, there are those games, like, and the ones that do deserve it, like your Ecos, Shadow of the Colossus, Rez, just to pick some examples. Even Killer 7, which I hated that game, but it definitely merited a look at beyond the mechanics, beyond the rote sort of graphics, the checklist.
It's the experience.
Yeah, but the thing is, there are people out there writing those reviews. They're doing it on their blogs. Some of them are doing it on bigger sites. Those reviews are out there. The reason that there's no Lester Bangs, there's no one person who's been elevated, is because, one, there aren't enough games for somebody to consistently do it, and two, the audience doesn't want it. There's not a big enough audience that wants to read, what's his name? The guy, I don't even want to say his name because I don't want to give him any more credit. I'm not a big fan of his, but those certain guys who do it right now, they don't get enough attention because there's not a wide audience that Esquire magazine that wants to read it.
I've been working with CGW for the last 6 months about completely changing the way they do their review section. And we decided that we wanted to get away from just, this idea of just checking off all the points about the game and summarizing with a score, and get towards something that puts the game in context and taps into the way people react to it and spend more time with it. Print is always late. So let's take advantage of being late and let's absorb ourselves in the experience a little bit and talk about that and how the community's responding.
Right. And
we did all this. It was very, very grand. And thousands of responses since you took the score off. I don't buy magazines so I can read the articles. I want the number at the end. Right. Which is bred
reading retards. Like, really?
Well, see, my thing, why can't you have both? You can have the score. You can have the score for the people that just want the score, and that's their takeaway, their entire takeaway from it. But I think so. You keep the people that just want the score, but you also give them the stuff. The stuff you're talking about, I think, is more important for PC games, because the other thing about PC games, the review is always late, and it's like a print magazine is like a month and a half late, and it's like you're talking about Battlefield 2 coming out. I'm sitting here playing it, talking about all the bugs and patches and things that have come out since it. So that's why I like the idea of the CGW.
As the games are opening, it's coming on 360 already, things with Oblivion and Graw, and the way that people are they're playing the game and then they're making their own experience within the game. Right. There's a set of rules here.
Yeah.
And it's not a sandbox game, but it does offer some freedom. So the way people play Battlefield, like Sean Elliott plays in these games where they do all this wacky shit that kind of bends the rules of what the game is capable of.
Right.
People go in and, they've made an MMO out of it, and people play Oblivion and do wacky shit in it.
The Halo multiplayer, people made their own. They made zombies versus shotguns, where they made almost like Resident Evil out of it, just by tweaking the rules.
People play PGR, where you can only play. You have to, they set their own rules that aren't defined by the game. They're set by the community. It's like, okay, if you lose, you get the best car in the game. We all get lousy cars, and then whoever loses the next. People are making their own fun and the community around the game. And you're right about that. And it's not talking about the art, but it is talking about experience as opposed to mechanics. But you do have to get through the mechanics. It's like if the controls for steering in PGR suck, it is our duty to talk about that, because you can't get to what it's trying to achieve until you've got through the interaction.
Right. I think that's the problem, though, is that like people have talked about already. Like, so many of these games don't even let you get to that point. Like, to get to that point where community is important, to get to that point where you're getting to what the community's doing for the game. And another problem, I think, is that the way people write about games, they write about games in terms of existing media. And it's like one of the quotes in here is from the Steven Johnson dude who wrote Everything Bad is Good for You. And it's like, games can't be analyzed using aesthetic tools that we've developed to evaluate narrative art, like books or films. And like, game journalism and game reviewing cribs so much from like film theory. Yeah. Like, you even see it, like last week we were going to talk about this Henry Jenkins interview, and he's actually coincidentally quoted here. This Henry Jenkins interview on GameSet Watch, where he talked about like the emergence of auteurs in gaming, where you have guys like Miyamoto and Kojima, and that's nicked straight from like film. That's nicked straight from like contemporary film criticism from the 60s. And the thing is, I agree and disagree with Klosterman's point, because there aren't, to me, a whole lot of compelling game reviewers. One guy who writes about games who I really like, and I will mention, is this guy named Clive Thompson, who writes sort of about the experience of playing games. And he writes for Wired, and he used to write for Slate, and he writes for NYT. And Clive is solid. Like, Clive writes about the experience of it, and he writes about how it feels to be the shark in Jaws. Like, Jaws, like, really? Like, it's not, but that you're writing about the experience, and then, that's more progressive in terms of what you want, or what Klosterman wants.
Did he actually, was that a real example? Did he write about Jaws?
Yeah, he wrote about it for Wired.
So reading that review, it wasn't just one of those little Wired capsules?
No, he has a column.
So what did you get out of it? Did it sound like a positive thing? Did it sound like a good game? Writing about the experience. Did you not wonder afterwards?
Sharky described controlling Jaws as like steering a truck full of fat kids.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I think it goes back to what Mark says, that, like, on the most base level, people just want to know if it's good, if I should buy it or not.
Also,
I mean, but people will get there. I think it's like when films first started, right? It was just like, oh, look, it's a horse moving. Like, you know, that's all it was. It was like, look at the pictures
But
move.
every movie and every music, there are common things that you can't get out of it, because it's a linear narrative. Even music is a linear narrative, and even Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera, you can say, what is she trying to say here? What is she trying to get across?
Right.
And you can analyze that. You know, I was
it's
playing.
not participatory.
It's not participatory, but there's a mess. There's a reason that the words are written, or there's a reason that the narrative. I was playing Cars on the DS last night, and there was a game where I'm tapping traffic lights in order, like a Simon game.
Right. What was Cars trying
to say?
It was trying to say, buy this game, see the movie, buy the Happy Meal, make your kids buy every. I mean, it's like
it is consumerism.
So is it a problem with? Is it a problem with us, the writer, or a problem with the industry itself?
Both.
I disagree with the question. I don't see it as a problem. Like, if you want to read that sort of thing, you're in the minority and you can find it.
But if in the context of what he's asking, he's right. He says video game criticism can't evolve because video game criticism can't get started. It can't get started in the context of what he's talking about, which is this cinema, music style, literature criticism. But it's so much more complex than that. And I think when you start getting into, he's talking about the significance of potentiality. Games they do guide you. It's multiple forks on a linear narrative. It's like, it is going to be different for everyone.
Right.
And you can skip parts of it.
Right. And it's going to get better and better that way. But I don't think it's a problem, because I think it's going to take care of itself. I think as the audience grows for games, and as the new types of games come out that really are trying to say something, like films do, and like a lot of music does, even popular music, that audience is going to be there, and that there's going to be new outlets and people like us that are going to be older than will be writing about it from different perspectives.
Have you guys both experimented? I've experimented with this stuff, and I review.
In college?
I experimented in college. With one of the Gran Turismos, I decided that I wrote many reviews of Gran Turismo, and in one of them I decided that I was going to use one single race to try and summarize the experience. And it was about one of the races later in the game, going around the Nürburgring, and what it felt like compared to driving a car in real life, and the exhilaration of it, and the tension, and sort of the sort of excitement and the emotion of like trying to stay on the track. And it was one of the things at the end of the game where an old version of your car goes off around the track, and then you have to catch up with them in the new version.
Right.
It's like a pretty simple game, but to try and get into sort of what it is to be really excited about driving and cars and being a car fan. And a few people that are really into cars responded really well to that review, but the bulk of people that read any criticism of video games thought it was bullshit. They wanted to know how the cars handled and how many of them there were and what it looked like. And I think there's an expectation of the audience has to shift, and there is an element with what we do where we are serving what we've been asked for.
Right. Well, and I think there's an audience out there for it now. Like, maybe even a lot of people who listen to this show would like to hear, like a larger thing about Metal Gear Solid 3, its storyline and stuff like that. But and so like having an outlet for that, but to say that all, gaming criticism needs to be pushed forward, I think maybe it's not realistic, but I have faith that as the demand grows, that somebody's probably already out there already doing this, will be elevated to Lester Bangs status, because there will be an audience out there that actually appreciates it.
I don't think
or her.
The written word is necessarily the place it's going to come. I mean, like, we do this every week. There are other podcasts. A lot of the podcasts from all of the expected gaming media things are a lot chattier and more subjective and more emotional than what you see written down, because when we write stuff down, it's taken very, very literally. And we can talk about things right now that if we wrote it, we'd get flamed for. But I think there's the context of being able to speak about it, and you're not upsetting people as much because they can hear the emotion in your voice, and what Lester was able to do in print, because it was, you belching again?
I'm having internal
God.
No more.
problems.
Get
I
more
was
and
on-
some Gas
I
X.
was on a roll, damn it.
No more Coke for you during the show.
It always happens during like a monologue
Yeah.
too. You do it at the absolute worst possible time.
But what we need is people to be. I think people are fine with more subjective criticism of gaming, and I think people get hung up on, well, that wasn't an objective review, was it? And I personally, I don't want to read purely objective. I don't want to read the sound is, the graphics is. I do.
Right.
I do want to know how it touched you. Did you have fun with it or not? And I think once we can get through that and everyone's fine with that a lot of the lessons that we're learning from watching things like the One Up Show and listening to podcasts, and
Right.
that voice can come out more and it can be more personal.
Well, it's sort of like the email that we passed around a week ago or 2 weeks ago now about the death of journalism. Like you were talking there about objectivity versus subjectivity. And I don't really know that I want to read anything objective most of the time anyway.
Right.
Like,
See, but then there's the other way. I don't want to read. Your girlfriend broke up with you on Saturday, and then you sat down to play Big Mother Truckers on Monday, and all you could think about was her, and that's the entire, And
But I do want to know why
but
when you played Big Mother Truckers, if you just irrationally hated it because it didn't speak to you, I do want to hear you say that.
Right.
Because right now,
better than that to try to pass it off as objective.
anything to do with writing about games. I don't think when we were on AGM years ago, you could assume to an extent that your audience was in a bit of a bubble, and that there was a good chance that the only kind of criticism of games that they got was what you were providing them. And there's no need to make that assumption anymore. You are one voice among thousands.
Right.
So to be more subjective is more valid, because you can say, I reacted this way to it, and I had access to it before you, so I'm getting the word out ahead of time. If you're like me, you're not going to have a very good time with it.
But it's also tricky because I have to like you, and I have to know who you are in order to like you, and that's happening more and more. But it's like
You're liking me more and more.
it sounds like the start of a song. Like anyway,
huge drum.
but like on EG, there's a lot of reviewers out there now, even with freelancers and stuff like that, even on One Magazine, to try to keep track of, this is the guy. The message board guys, they do it. They'll remember. Wait, you're the guy who gave Metal Gear Solid 2 an 8.5. Now you're saying this is better, and you gave it or score. But the average person out there has got to remember your name along with like 20 or 30 other people, and if they agree with you or disagree with you. I mean, I think there's a middle ground. I don't think games are there yet where it should be completely subjective, but you can't be. There's no such thing as totally
I guess
objective.
with subjectivity, I wasn't implying LiveJournal either.
Right.
Like that's not the leap that I wanted. Like my girlfriend broke up with me, but man, that 16-wheeler makes it okay.
Right.
Well, this is something that we could probably go on and on and on about, but I think we'll stop it here and we'll take a break and we'll come back and do the news.
Hi, this is Jeff Green, the editor-in-chief of Computer Gaming World magazine. With me is Ryan Scott, associate editor of CGW. Say hi, Ryan.
Hi.
Ryan is held at gunpoint right now, and unless you listen to the CGW radio podcast, I'm going to shoot him. So if you want Ryan to live, please listen to the CGW radio podcast at cgwradio.oneup.com or at iTunes. Do it for Ryan. Do it for Ryan's mom.
Can't get enough of DL.TV? Then download our podcast. Just go to DL.TV and click on the audio link.
Turning them loose.
You'll be able to listen to Patrick, Robert, and the rest of the gang over and over and over again.
Remember to keep the ear canal clean and don't share if you don't want to risk spreading disease.
You're listening to One Up Yours on the One Up Radio Network.
And we're back, and this is the final segment. And this is your news host, Luke Smith.
The first and probably biggest and best news of the week seemed like it was going to be this Vivendi presentation that they gave on Wall Street to a bunch of investors about how all of Blizzard's franchises were going to turn into MMOs. So that means like StarCraft MMO, Diablo MMO,
Lost Vikings MMO.
God,
Awesome.
And so this was a big deal for about all of 12 hours before Blizzard sent out an email that said, no, seriously, it's not going to be.
It was just wishful thinking. Everyone was like, why have just one game with 5 million subscribers when you can have all of your games.
I wonder what happened with their stock price in that time.
Well, the thing is, like, by the time Blizzard issued their statement, it was probably
We should have found that out before we came on.
1 o'clock on the 1 o'clock on the East Coast. So it would have only had 4 to 5 hours to go up.
Yeah,
from the day before.
I just think it's hilarious. Like, if I was, Mr. Big stockholder in VU, it's like, all right, guys, I'm about to sell like 400,000 shares. Let's tell them every franchise is going to be the next World of Warcraft. We're going to have 10 of them. Let's do that. Do it at 8 o'clock. I sell at 10. We're golden.
Well, another news site talked about, like, the GameSpot had slides sent to them, and they didn't publish the slides, which was a little interesting in terms of, like, if I had images from this Wall Street presentation that showed the WoW chart model and then, like, speculative StarCraft and Diablo MMO numbers too, and that was like part of their presentation, then I would probably have put that on the internet. But they didn't show that, and Blizzard had not responded or anything, and Sean was busy today or something. And I mean, how can you ask about it when I don't have the slides and I don't know who GameSpot's secret source is? Dicks.
The alleged slides.
Yeah, the alleged. That's what it is.
It's weird
right
to
now.
talk about. I can understand. Maybe they had some agreement where they said not to show them, but it's like if you talk about them, then it seems like you might as well.
Yeah, you put up or shut up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's obviously something going on here, though, between Vivendi and Blizzard. Like, that Vivendi presented it this way. Like, Vivendi clearly has a specific vision for what they're expecting out of Blizzard, because the presentation did happen. And then Blizzard said, whoa, not so fast. And what we talked about at the end of the news story was like, listen, the natural progression of what Blizzard was going to do would be to deny everything. Because in order to do that, then Blizzard can maintain the image of secrecy and give their eventual announcement of their next game, which will probably have some sort of MMO elements. Regardless, it probably will. It'll give it a little more gravity.
There'll be some persistence to whatever, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's sort of... It's like that touch and go bullshit that we're seeing so much of.
But I think any kind of... I mean, the CGW guys talked about this a bit on their podcast, about why World of Warcraft is working so well and why potentially something like World of StarCraft wouldn't. And they were talking about how there is something kind of unifying about a fantasy environment where people can go in and they can do anything they want.
It's not with sci-fi.
But with sci-fi, it is a lot more male and a lot more aggressive and a lot more technological. So, like, Jeff Green gave the example that his daughter right now is making Halloween costumes and baking cookies, and that's what she's doing every day in the game. And the fantasy environment lends itself to sort of innocuous activities. But StarCraft doesn't really lend itself. Or if you were going to go that way, it would be a lot more forced to insert sort of innocuous everyday activity into a futuristic world.
Yeah, well, I didn't see or hear the CGW thing, but I was kind of randomly thinking about this too. Like, somebody has to make a decision. Do we do the next World of Warcraft and just try to and keep everybody that we've already got and keep this thing going, or do we make a StarCraft and attempt to change everything, or do you make both and potentially like fragment everything in half? Like, it seems like,
whatever's going to happen, I think it's going to be it's a really tall order to assume that you're going to keep the 5 million people in Warcraft and get another 5 million people, or the same 5 million people in StarCraft. It's going to erode one and ultimately erode all of it. I mean, it is going to slowly grow the market if it's great.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to have like, the next key to success is another.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
The downfall of EverQuest was EverQuest 2.
Good example, right?
Sorry.
So, Luke, you play crap load. What would you want? Like, what do you think Warcraft people want? Do they want World of Warcraft 2, or do they want StarCraft?
I think that Blizzard's talked about how that World of Warcraft is a game world they expect to last for 5 years. So that puts its end around 2009. So we will see a game in the interim. I wouldn't want to see another MMO from Blizzard because I feel like that's going to divert their resources. And I think what a lot of people in World of Warcraft would rather see would be another RTS or like an official Diablo sequel.
Really?
So people would really like to see a StarCraft sequel. People would really like to see another Warcraft RTS, but you're not going to see...
You think people would be happy with that? People are now used to spending like 40 hours a week like online with these certain friends, that with a new franchise that was just like a more regular game, not a massively multiplayer
They're still waiting
game?
for original World of Warcraft content that they promised at the launch, right? Like hero classes, stuff like that.
Classes, there's a bunch of zones in the game.
They still even haven't done their first expansion yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a game that'll expand 3 times over its lifespan. I think that the Blizzard, like the rabid Blizzard hardcore, are people who are playing WoW, but are also people who played StarCraft and people who want to get back to StarCraft. But admittedly, the business model of a StarCraft MMO would be huge with the popularity of StarCraft in Asia. Like, it really would be like Blizzard's world domination,
right?
To have an MMO based in the StarCraft universe. Like, just because of the support that you'll get in Asia.
It would be interesting to see them try it, because, I mean, you know, Galaxy's tried some of the ideas that they're doing successfully in Warcraft, and it just didn't pull it off, and didn't work well, and it wasn't fun.
Is Blizzard one of those companies like Bungie that you get the feeling they're going to do what they want, and they're not super beholden to anyone?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
Okay.
They're fast getting to the point where they don't really need Vivendi. You know,
right.
they don't actually need someone to physically distribute their stuff. They can put whatever the next thing is out as a download and then charge a subscription, and they don't have to manufacture anything ever again if they don't want to.
Like a Blizzard version of Steam?
Yeah. I mean, that's got to be on the cards, you know, before the end of Warcraft. I mean, there'll be an upgrade to Warcraft, I would imagine, when they overhaul the engine and the graphics, and
which is they're already talking about doing, or they're already working on. Allegedly.
So if they do that, it could last longer. It could last longer than 5 years.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty realistic for them to think about it in a 5-year cycle. I think that's pretty realistic to look at. Because already though, you're seeing enough people quitting where you're fracturing shards. Like these servers that people are playing on are emptying. And so the transfer option is going to be one thing that's going to like tighten that up a little bit. But you're going to have these, like, when you have this many shards, and World of Warcraft has so many player servers, when people start an exodus out of the game, which is inevitable and will take place over time, and we're already seeing it to some degree, you're going to lose the population on some servers. Like some servers like BlackRock or whatever will still be huge. And even when they have transfers off, they're still going to be huge. But a lot of small servers are going to start to choke and die. And Blizzard needs to find a way to address that in order for its game to stay lively. I mean, that happened to EverQuest. The same exact thing happened to EverQuest. To talk about one more thing, I mentioned the success of an inevitable StarCraft MMO, or a StarCraft MMO in its inevitable success in Asia. Asia this week saw huge success from a game called EVE Online, which is one of those games that I love to talk about, but I don't like to play. It's like a spacey MMO that has this very persistent and very real galaxy, and it opened up over in...
is that NCSoft?
No, it's this like Icelandic company called CCS. They're just the most...
It's a very meticulous game.
I've seen the posters around.
The game
looks a bunch, but...
The game looks beautiful, but it is just...
Oh, it's kind of boring.
Man,
I like how there were just multiple sides.
It means well.
Yeah, it's like conceptually it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and that the players have so much freedom. It's brilliant, but it's like
if you really want to believe that you're trading in space, this game will have you believe that. You know, it's
trading spices and
I mean it's like old school sort of privateer wing, you know, but there's this sort of like, you know, I guess it's got some roots in Elite. Really, you know, but it's like, you know, lots of sort of jumping from place to place and then back again, and
right.
But to get back to the point, like it opened, the beta started.
We drifted
I didn't
from
think
the
there
point
was
there.
a point.
No, there is.
You had a point.
There is. EVE went into beta overseas and broke the world record for most users online in a concurrent game space in a persistent game.
How many?
Over 30,000 people were logged into the new world at the same time.
Wait, I don't understand.
And it didn't break?
30,000 on at the same time on one server?
On one server, like on one shard. It'd be the equivalent of 30,000 people on one World of Warcraft world.
How many people typically get on a... I mean, I don't know. I have no reference
I don't know what concurrency highs are, like population highs. The highest servers in WoW are like 20,000.
Give me some numbers.
Like
20,000? Okay.
Users on a server, not at the same time.
Okay.
Even
so
the Western
30,000 concurrent players.
30,000 people logged into a single persistent game world at one time.
Are there any anecdotes about the experience?
Yeah.
It would be in Asian languages.
Oh. Okay.
No one speaks those.
Yes.
No one speaks those and
I don't have
English.
I don't have that technology at the news desk. We have to go to other sites to lovingly translate things.
We'll get you some sidekicks
that'd be awesome.
And some C-3POs.
All right, next.
Yeah, next. The backwards compatibility update came out.
Oh,
Microsoft still cares.
Hey, Pinham kind of backpedaled a bit, right?
Yeah, he did sort of backpedal like frantically last weekend on Major Nelson's podcast.
I don't think he'd like you to think that it was frantic. I think it was just energetic,
exasperated,
energetic, and enthusiastically backpedaling.
Yeah.
But we've got a slew of new exciting backwards compatibility titles.
I heard that now 27% of the top 300 games are backwards compatible. And I think now is a good time to bring up our friend Tim Schafer, who said on his blog this week, I have an Xbox 360 and love it. I love it so much. I wish I could spend every living moment of my life playing it. My wife and I have discussed it, and we've agreed to name our first child Geometry Wars. You'd like that, Mark?
Yes.
The only thing that could make my Xbox 360 any better is if it would just play this game that we made called Psychonauts. That was kind of an annoying thing about the pile of shame, in that I did have to dig out my Xbox and plug it back in again in order to play it, because the damn thing won't play on the 360.
I have to take my power cord from home on our dev kit unit here and plug it into my Xbox at home.
But there are rumors now that it may end up being.
Right, yeah. That's what I've heard too. That entire blog post too is really hilarious. He goes on to he name checks Big Mother Truckers, and so the new list. I mean, there's Doom 3. There's a couple, Silent Hill 4, a couple good games on it, but it is kind of like who's deciding this when Psychonauts, one of the games that I was listening to the OXM podcast, and they mentioned that they did a feature about the top 20 games that you didn't play, and that Psychonauts was one of them. But it's like a big percentage of the games that they ended up recommending are still not on the compatibility list. So it's kind of like,
it's interesting that there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 6 Japan-only games on the list.
Yeah, not a whole lot of clamoring. Wow. Plus, you could buy a new 360 there for like $120 or something. Like they're super cutthroat clearance price.
So, I mean, it sounds like they are going to continue plodding through it. Did Tim give a reason for why Psychonauts wasn't? Or was it just? Oh, he was talking about how top men were working on it.
We have top men. Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, they still haven't really talked a great deal about specifically why some things are more difficult than others. I mean, it's the emulation and it tapping into the graphics technology particularly.
The other part that I liked about his post was he gave the email address that they said that they will read every email sent to that address, and it's I forget what the exact thing is, but you can find his blog post and respond to it. But it's like compatibility at Xbox360.com or something.
And this is where you can email to ask for a particular game.
So his thing was kind of a call to people to say do it. So if you're listening,
go to doublefine.com is his blog, right?
Picking it up now.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so go to doublefine.com, click on the link, and say you want Psychonauts.
If you do,
but
or any, or whatever.
From what I've seen of it so far, it is very good.
Games that you want. It's definitely deserving to.
And that's not just because Mark's girlfriend is a programmer.
I mean, Big Mother Truckers is backwards compatible.
The address for that is backcomp@microsoft.com.
Oh, there you go.
Subject Psychonauts in capital letters with 4 exclamation points after it.
4 specifically? Okay, you get on that.
Precision.
Next.
Big interview over at Ars Technica. Some good, some bad. This Microsoft developer named Matt Lee, who's one of the Xbox 360 devs. What he does is goes around and sort of massages with game developers, massages the way that they're designing code to optimize what they're working on. So he works with a ton of companies.
Oh, right.
For a very limited amount of time.
They have kind of like a hit squad, I think, right? Where if a game shows promise, they send like the heavy hitters in to
optimize,
really
streamline, and like go in and like, all right, let's do this, and then they go in, do it.
They parachute in.
And he says, which I think is pretty perceptive, that Europe is the battleground for the next generation console wars. They don't. Some news sites tried to spin it because he said something to the effect of Japan isn't as important as it used to be. And then a paragraph later, he immediately restates and says, but Japan's still very important, and we're not backing out.
But Europe's pretty damn big.
But yeah, Europe.
I know, I'm from there. There's a lot of us.
You've seen it.
I've seen it. There's a lot of people there.
Europe.
And, I mean, it's interesting that he says that. There are places in Europe where, similar to Japan, Microsoft has just never made an impact. Places like Spain, particularly, where they're just really Sony loyal.
Right.
And the 360's out there, and it just hasn't made an impact at all. And, if they can get the right message out there and get out ahead of the PS3, I mean, there's a lot to be won in Europe.
Well, no question, Japan. I mean, I don't think it's controversial at all. I think the Japanese developers would tell you that Japan's not as important as it used to be. Like, just look at the top 50 games of last year compared to 10 years ago. There's no contest. And you do see people paying way more attention to Europe. Like, a big thing of Phil Harrison's speech at GDC was on Blu-ray, you can have just one disc with all the different versions and all the different languages because it has the storage space. And the place that really matters is Europe, because start off like a like a Ubisoft game, and you see all the different languages the European versions have to have. It's a total bitch, to do all those different versions, the different SKUs. Microsoft launching there at the same time. Now Sony is pretty much launching there at the same time. Like, people are definitely paying more attention to Europe, but. So what is his argument about why Europe is the key battleground? Like, what exactly is he saying? Just because
he just says it is
potential audience,
like really, that's what he says. Europe is the battleground. Like, the exact quote is. The whole quote is, Japan's obviously a very important market for us and one in which we have to work hard at. The main concern is getting the games that players in that market want to play. One thing to note, however, is that Japan is not necessarily the most important market for gaming these days. It is also not quite as large as the U.S. and European markets. And then the last paragraph is, both the Japanese and U.S. markets are reaching saturation at this point. The big battleground for us and for everyone is going to be Europe. I don't know what he means by reaching saturation, though.
Maybe he thinks that Europe, the percentage of people in Europe that play games,
right? I mean, if you look at, however many 100 million PS2s worldwide, and 40 million in the US. There's only 100 million households in the US. So once you're up into 40% plus, your potential audience to expand further is getting pretty limited. And the other thing that he didn't talk about that's interesting is the talent in Europe that still hasn't been tapped into. You look at a lot of the really interesting games over the last few years, and the stuff continues to come out of France that's sort of artistically very interesting and some new ideas. There's a lot of stuff coming out of Russia. I mean, it's not technically Europe, but it's right next door, and a lot of it is from Russia, is coming out through Europe. You got guys like IO from one of those northern European countries. I can never remember which one. But there's a lot of interesting ideas coming from around that area that's not really getting tapped into worldwide, and I think this generation we're going to see a lot of that stuff coming out. And I think the sort of next wave of big publishers are going to be the guys that do their own stuff and tap into some of this European talent.
And the last thing that I thought that he talked about that was particularly interesting is, like, anyone from Microsoft or anyone from Sony has to do, he got his requisite jab in at the cell processor, and he had this to say: I think that porting from the Xbox 360 to the PS3 will be reasonably difficult, since the Xbox 360 has a lot more general purpose processing power that can be flexibly reallocated, and all of the Xbox 360 CPU cores have equal access to all memory. The asymmetric nature of the cell could easily lead to situations where the game has too little of one type of processing power and too much of another.
Did he go, nah,
these things, they always
afterwards?
turn into these he said, she said things, because at GDC you have Ted Price up there like, oh, the cell processor, it's great, you can allocate this to that. At a certain point, it's like you don't know who to believe.
I'm at that point.
Yeah.
I'm literally at that point where it's like I'm getting so sick of.
But to our point earlier, why do we care? Ultimately, as long as the games end up being good.
I mean, it sounds like he's like scaring the development community. That's like for the Game Developer Magazine crowd. It's like, hey, guess what? You think it's going to make your life hard.
PS3 development's really hard. We told you it was easy, but it's actually really hard.
But how are you going to? I mean, and to that question, how are you going to get a straight answer about it? How do you go about getting a straight answer about, is this a tough platform?
We need to talk to some developers about that. But aren't they getting their final dev kits around now? I mean, they've not even had the final development environment.
The
yet.
trick is you need a developer that not only who you trust, but that really trusts you, because nobody wants to really talk crap about either one.
Well, they want their squad of optimizers to parachute in when they have 5 minutes to get the game out for launch.
Right.
What you got next?
Exactly.
In retarded information, Yui Bull wants to fight you.
Speaking of European talent.
Oh, right.
Me specifically?
No, he wants to. Yeah, he wants to fight people who are criticizing his films.
Actually fight them.
People who did criticize. Here's the caveat, because I was saying, game videos, we will pay Mike Tyson to write a review of House of the Dead and just kick his ass, in the ring. We could put up a thing, a PayPal contribution. We get plenty of people to help us out there. But you had to have written a negative review of one of his films when, like, ending sometime last year.
Here's the qualifications for entry to fight Yuri Boll. In order to qualify, you have to be a critic who wrote 2 extremely negative articles about Boll last year. That qualifies virtually anyone who wrote an article about Boll in 2005. But who's keeping track?
How did they write that there?
No, that's Patrick.
I was just going to say, Patrick probably qualifies.
That's Klepek. No, he doesn't, though, because he's too small. You have to weigh 140 pounds.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, there's a weight restriction?
He's got a lot of hair.
You can bulk him up.
We
can get him on a
We need a
program.
training montage.
When's the fight due to take place?
All we need is
It's a publicity thing. It's on the set of him filming like Dungeon Siege or something.
I don't know what he's working on next, but I guess he's working on House of the Dead 3 also.
What?
Yeah.
He's also working on an adaptation of Postal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
which I'm sure will be artistically
finally
glorious.
Praise God.
Fantastic. You got anything else?
Last thing today. Finally, the light at the end of the dark tunnel of noise. Tomb Raider. This Tomb Raider game for PSP, which we talked about at the break.
Yeah.
A trailer, a full-fledged sort of
Tomb
teaser.
Raider anniversary.
Yeah, like a 10-year.
Have you seen it?
Called. Yeah, so we have the video up. There's a 1UP news story. There's a video up on GameVideos.com. Apparently, it was a 10-year remake, anniversary remake of the original Tomb Raider for the PSP, and it actually looked good. Like when I first saw it, I thought it was somebody said, like, did you see this Tomb Raider for PSP thing? Sent me the thing. I thought, oh, this must be a fan-made thing because they're not redoing it, but when I saw it, it's obvious that it was pro, and apparently it was really close to done.
Is it using models from the Legend?
No. No, I don't know. The models looked they looked good, but I didn't recognize them. I didn't play a lot of Legend though, but I definitely recognized the environments. I had the T-Rex thing from the first game, and I'd had Laura and her old outfit and all that kind of stuff. But it looks good. I mean, it looks good for a PSP game, but. Apparently canned.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
So that brings us neatly to question of the week, which is a nice softball down the middle for you. In light of Tomb Raider being remade 10 years later, what old games would you like to see remade, brought up to date? Any platform, any game, let us know on boards.oneup.com, and we'll talk about them next week. You have anything to add to that, Luke? You kind of stand there with your mouth open.
No, I was hoping that you were going to do that part.
You were hoping I was?
I wanted that to be. I was opening my mouth.
Sending the mind away.
That's the job of the host.
Also, this week it will be the last part of the Ubisoft and One. The iTunes music things that we're giving away, and this week it's what are we doing, Skip?
Show music.
Show music. This is the good one.
So, yep.
The art was pretty spectacular. So we've been, I don't know if you noticed, but we have been escalating what we expect from you week to week. This is the
it's been a litmus test of worship.
So it started, and as Mark pointed out earlier, we have been kind of asking you to elevate us somewhat.
But that's
you are their golden gods.
It was mostly me.
Skip and Garnet
worship
came up
us
with that.
as your craven idols.
So, do we have
kneel before Zod?
Do we have specific restrictions on the music? Does it have to be a period, like a certain length? Or?
No, I'll post a message board thread tonight with what we need.
So we want you to do show music, basically.
Yeah,
for
like
us.
bumper music, like for our breaks and stuff like that. So like 30 seconds to a minute, vocals maybe.
Go crazy.
Cosby Show theme, yes.
I think you guys
just
should
like
use...
just like with the Photoshop stuff, just be creative.
Yeah,
I think you guys should use music from Killer 7.
Can we?
Why not? What is Capcom going to risk your wrath?
I don't know.
The wrath of you and
I'm
your
just
audience?
Worried about licensing and the RIAA and ASCAP and
ASCAP.
Do we have lawyers?
Yeah, we have a number of lawyers.
We have teams of lawyers.
I'll call them when we're done.
All right.
Get
Black
them prepared.
helicopters.
So yeah, go to boards.oneup.com and check the rules. You'll also, as we said earlier, there'll be the winner from the illustration, which there were some very good ones.
Very good ones.
There were some very interesting animated ones as well. I particularly enjoyed the dancing Garnet.
Oh, wow.
I saw
Dancing
Garnet retard late one night with Skip, and literally was just on my floor laughing. In part because I don't have a desk at home.
Okay, so until next week, we're out. Garnet will be back with us
Garnet
next
and
week.
Shane.
And Shane will be back, assuming he's been released from wherever it is he's imprisoned right now.
We'll have to ask Jen.
Make sure it's all right with Jen.
All right.
Bye.
See you next week.
This has been One Up Yours, a production of the Ziff Davis Game Group and part of the One Up Radio Network. One Up Yours is hosted by Garnet Lee and John Davison, produced by Andrew Pfister and Mike King, and is published every Friday afternoon at podcasts.oneup.com and at the iTunes Music Store.
What's up? I'm not in the fucking credits.